During the 20th century, Europeans used art to express themselves and to fight against political movements.
Therefore, art was a powerful tool used by individuals to express themselves in a time when communist rulers were forcing conformity.
In our film, we begin drawing conclusions with the rise of the Austria-Hungary Empire in 1867. Karl Lueger became mayor of Vienna in 1897. He is accredited with devising the ideas of Nazism, which planted the seeds of anti-Semitism that sparked Hitler's motivation. After World War I, Vienna emerges into art, expressing their ideas through different art forms.
In 1933, the Holocaust begins, affecting millions of people in different countries like Germany and Czech Republic. World War II led to the spread of communism. Communism led to revolutions involving propaganda and the expression through art. In 1941, World War II ends, also bringing the end of the Holocaust. The reign of communism takes place in Czechoslovakia from 1948 to 1989, bringing upon conflict during Prague Spring.
As punishment from World War II, Germany was broken up into 4 sections, giving each superpower a control of a sector in Berlin. In 1961, the Berlin Wall goes up, separating East and West Berlin. This created tension because families were separated overnight and the 2 different sides were governed differently. The East was governed under communist rule, while the West was governed with more freedom and more rights. In 1989, government officials opened up the wall, letting East and West Berlin reunite. This led to an influx of different cultures from the combining of sides.
The Austrian-Hungary Empire, which reigned from 1867 to 1918, would span over 11 countries in today's world. Because of its immense size, it was unable to have one unified language for all of its citizens. While this put a strain on people's nationalism, there were other forms of art that helped keep the people unified. One thing the people had as a whole was their national anthem. There were many composers and works of music that emerged from this extensive empire that are still used in the influence of classical music today. One of the most famous composers was Johann Strauss II. He was best known for his waltz and toured much of Austria-Hungary, Poland, and Germany. Johann the Younger, as he was known, long lived in his father, Johann the Elder's shadow, but grew to surpass him by sticking to his identity and style of music writing, which is what made him so successful and well known throughout the empire.
When learning about how the artists and thinkers influenced in Viennese culture, we got to see how much they affected Vienna's identity. For example, Sigmund Freud was the father of psychoanalysis and wrote in Stream of Consciousness. In his works, he made people question their identity. Karl Kraus, a well-known cultural critic who influenced the arts movement, responded that psychoanalysis is an artificial illness. In Vienna, A Cultural History, it states, quote, "Vienna was different. Here, the authorities believed that high culture could act as a binding counterforce to national divisiveness." End quote. This passage shows that the Viennese people are proud of where they came from and express it through various art forms.
This trip has been great. Vienna's been pretty fun.
Yeah, it was. The architecture is kind of weird, though.
That's because Austria has had a really complicated history. The older buildings, like the Hofburg Imperial Palace and St. Stephen's Cathedral, were meant to express political and social modernism. They expressed power that way. And these had a high level of craft, making them expensive to build and maintain. But most of the other old buildings are unified in color and massing, making them all blend together.
Oh, really? What about the newer ones?
So after World War I, Vienna really emerged into art. Karl Lueger, who was the mayor of Vienna after World War I, wanted to modernize Vienna. Modernization is open rejection of traditions and alternative ways of representations and perception. These ideas are expressed more in the modern architecture architecture of Vienna, like the Zaha Hadid building we saw on the university campus, and that Joe and Co building hotel that was across from St. Stephen's Cathedral.
Oh, cool. I had no idea that architecture showed the culture of the past and the present so well. Thanks for teaching me that.
You're welcome, kiddo.
A group that was often left out was the Jewish population. Their beliefs contradicted the popular Christian beliefs. These anti-Semitic beliefs helped fuel the rise of the Nazi Party.
The Nazis used propaganda films to spread the ideals of the party. They also forced the Jews to stage a perfect community during the filming process and a Red Cross visit. Ultimately, Terezin was still a concentration camp. Despite all the new buildings and clothes during the visit, people still suffered and died there. Terezin's role was to be a transition, leaving the inhabitants waiting until they were sent to Auschwitz.
Hey Leah,
Hey, what's up?
you know what I thought was really cool in Prague?
Oh, those donut cones?
Those two, but the memorial to those who suffered from communism.
That was cool too.
I just thought it was so neat how it was one guy, but as you looked at it, it deteriorated, and the one guy symbolizes conformity and communism, and the deterioration shows that his identity was being taken away.
Yeah, it was really cool. I enjoyed it.
So cool how people can use art to speak such a strong message.
It really was. You know, art speaks volumes. While in Prague, something I felt a strong connection to was the Terezin concentration camp and the memorial to the victims of communism. At the Terezin concentration camp, they had a display of posters that the Nazis used for propaganda. Being a graphic designer, I was drawn to the style and colors of the posters, rather than the information, because I obviously couldn't read anything. Many of the posters incorporated the color red because it's associated with the feeling of power. These posters were very simple but powerful since the Nazis used these to change the entire thinking of the Holocaust. At the memorial to the victims of communism, I related to this because it was such a strong artistic piece that was going against communism. When looking at the piece, anyone who didn't know anything about communism or didn't know as much could clearly understand the concept from it. These memorials are important to have because it allows people to grieve and reflect on the events that transpired in the past. These countries housing memorials where the devastations happen is a way for the country to take responsibility. It helps people learn about the events so the past doesn't repeat itself.
Daniel Lipskin designed every aspect of the Jewish Museum in Berlin in order to create an experience for visitors. The importance of the museum is the experience, and the experience is open to interpretation. The building is a zigzag shape with an intersecting line. The floor plan creates voids, which represent the absence of Jews from German history. Some of the voids are filled with installations. One of the installations is the memory void, called Fallen Leaves. It is dedicated to the over 10,000 faces covering the floor, which represent all the innocent victims of war and violence. Walking through the exhibit, there is no choice but to walk on the metal pieces of all sizes, which look like faces. The result is a loud clanking of metal on metal as you walk through the exhibit, even if you try to be quiet. The message is that the history of these people cannot be silenced and forgotten. The architectural design relays an effective and powerful message that may otherwise remain untold. After the collapse of the Berlin Wall, the graffiti artists marched straight into East Germany. Mitte, Friedrichshain, Prenzlauer Berg, all of the areas that the military had occupied, became a new playground for the Western artists and became a new world for the Eastern artists who joined them. Few doubted that the East Germans' work was weightier. It wasn't that they were better artists, but that they could express, with authority, the one concept close to the hearts of all the people now living in the city, what it meant to be free. By Simon Arms.
Good evening, everyone. From the west side of the Berlin Wall at the Brandenburg Gate, I'm Tom Brokaw. The Brandenburg Gate, of course, is in East Berlin, and the sound that you hear and what you're seeing tonight, not hammers and sickles, but hammers and chisels as young people take down this wall bit by bit.
The Berlin Wall was used to draw boundaries and separate the people of Berlin after their loss in World War II. The east side of the wall was guarded very strictly under the communist rule, while the west side experienced life with much more freedom. After the fall of the wall, the citizens of Berlin decided not to get rid of the wall completely, but to keep some of it as a reminder of what happened. Instead of keeping this constant reminder of negativity and separation the wall brought, local artists decided to paint murals on it to change the history. The wall would no longer be seen as a force that was separating the people. The street art gave a new identity to the people of Berlin, as they were not going to be seen as different sides anymore, but as a whole.
How do you express your identity?
Well, as an architectural studies major, I really get to express the culture of places, especially in America, because that's mostly what we're focusing on in my studies. That really helps tie back to the culture of America, where I grew up, and then how that relates back to me and how I can express myself through that passion.
Go Shanny!
Hey Leah, how do you express your identity?
So as a graphic design major, a lot of what we do is problem solving, and sometimes when you're working like that, it gets hard to make sure you keep your voice and your identity in your pieces and you just don't focus solely on the problem. So one way that I try to do that is I keep everything around me that I find inspirational on hand, if it's pictures or like napkins or stuff or business cards. So whenever I get stuck, I get to look at stuff like that and just find inspiration in things around me, places I've gone, the people around me.
Well, thinking about my own personal identity, one of the first things that comes to my mind is a female and a feminist, and those are two things that I'm very proud to be and I identify as. And at the Jewish Museum in Berlin, there was an entire exhibition called Cherchez la femme, which in French means look at the woman. And in this exhibit, it talks about women in religion, specifically and especially Jewish women and Muslim women, who are often objectified for how they choose to stick with their religion and how they want to observe it and be respectful and really follow with it. But there's so much contradiction around it that people don't always appreciate it and don't realize that it's their choice. And one of the biggest things I think we all need to remember about our personal identity is that it is personal. And for myself to feel one way, you are allowed to feel your own, and you're allowed to celebrate yourself and who you are and what you believe in. And I think that's really important. And the entire exhibition meant so much, not only to me, but I think all of the other women on this trip.
When I think about my identity, I think about how I think and how I act. When I say how I think about how when we went to the museums, I got a chance to look at timepieces from actual people who lived during the time of the Holocaust or the World Wars, and to see their experiences through letters and journals. When I think about how I act, I get to look at the present day sense of the Bosnian refugees we visited with. I notice that I do have my own actions, and I do try to make the world a better place in my little actions. But I want to be able to help more, and this has inspired me to outreach a little bit more into seeing and researching about the refugee crisis and what else I can do myself to help them.